Hey everyone, welcome back to Jardev. So I finished playing the game Root Film on Nintendo Switch recently. I did a video on the first, I think it was about 25 minutes or so, a couple of weeks ago I think it was now. And then I went on to finish playing it up in my spare time, so I wanted to give some final thoughts and talk about the game a little bit. Now I finished it. So my Switch playtime says at least 10 hours. Thank you for being so specific there, Switch. I think that means between 10 and 15 hours because some games, I think one game on their list's at least 15 hours. So I think probably around like 12 hours is a pretty close approximation of my playtime for Root Film. And overall it was pretty good. It was not bad. I've played a lot worse, for sure. I've definitely played better visual novels though. It had just a few quirks that I didn't really like, but overall I thought it was pretty decent, honestly. So the game is divided into 7 chapters basically, 5 as Yagumo, the main character, and 2 as Ryo, the other main character, I guess. And so as you proceed through the game, you unlock the other chapters. So I think like after Yagumo 2 or something, you unlock Ryo 1 kind of thing. And it is very similar to Phoenix Wright in that by the end of the game, in like chapter 5, it's kind of flashing back on things that happened in earlier chapters, and it's like, oh, this did actually matter. Like, you know, something that happened earlier that seemed like its own completely separate scenario. It all kind of ties in at the end, and I thought that was very clever. I will say though that QA must have just stopped working after Yagumo 3. Because Yagumo 4 and especially Yagumo 5 were riddled with spelling and grammatical errors. Like, not much going on in the first 5 chapters. Like, both of Ryo's were good, and the first 3 Yagumo chapters were very good. And then you get to 4, and like I said, especially 5, and it's like every 3 screens or something, you know, like every 3 sentences, bam, there's another error there. And it was just kind of shocking how drastically that quality fell off a cliff at the end of the game. And it was only in the text as well. Like, all the artwork was still great, all the music was great, but just the text and spelling and everything just was not done in the end of the game. I did actually note down a few things that annoyed me throughout the game, and these are things that I think shouldn't really have made it through QA. Like, if you're playing it and in testing, I don't know. I mean, maybe they wouldn't be annoyed by every single thing on my list, but surely some of them would have come up. So the first thing is in the synesthesia phrases, where Yagumo will hear a phrase that will become evidence later on. You'll hear it, and then for some reason you have to press the X button to acknowledge that you've heard it. And this is just kind of weird, because for the whole game you're pressing A to interact with things or to progress text. And then just for some reason you hear this phrase and you just have to press a completely different button. I just don't know why it wasn't keep pressing A for this. It's a very minor thing, but like you see this screen pop up a fair few times, and just every time I'm like, why am I not just pressing the same advanced text button for this? Another thing that bothered me about the game is that when you're exploring the map to go to each location, the direction buttons very rarely do what they're supposed to do. They only cycle through locations. You can't like freely move around the map. Like, say you're like in the dead center of a map and you wanted to go to the location on your left, you'd instinctively press left on the D-pad. But if the location on the left wasn't in order as the next location, your cursor would go somewhere different. So it's just very annoying that you could only cycle through the locations instead of being able to freely kind of like choose a direction and move over there. Again, another quite minor thing, but all of these kind of minor things just kind of built up over the course of my playtime. Another even smaller thing this time is just having to hold A to go to locations. Like I said, you press A throughout the game to advance text and everything, and then when you're on the map, instead of pressing A to go to a location, you have to hold down A, and you know, it's only holding it down for like 2 seconds or something. Again, very minor, it's just kind of adds up over the game. Just found it a bit annoying. Now this next criticism isn't minor, I don't think. Sometimes in order to get the evidence you need, you have to either talk to someone multiple times and the multiple changes a fair bit, or like examine a location multiple times. And I just found this very annoying because I tried to play through it blind, but eventually, you know, I'd have done everything I thought I needed to do, and I'm just looking at the map with like 8 locations, and I know I have to go to each one of these locations and click on every single thing that I can examine in each location and talk to every single person again, even though I think I've probably talked to them all. It's just annoying. Like, sometimes you'll have to talk to someone twice, sometimes you'll have to talk to someone 4 times, sometimes you'll have to talk to someone twice, go talk to someone else 3 times, and then come back to the first person and talk to them another time. It just didn't make sense. Like sometimes they'll be like interviewing a suspect and they'll like ask them a question. I'll be like, oh, right, that's the answer we needed. But then for some reason they ask like an even more important question after. And so if you didn't think to just keep talking to this person, which you figure out eventually, but especially at the start of the game, it was not very clear that you have to just talk to everyone constantly. The next thing on my list is just a bit more of a personal pet peeve. I found the game to be a bit tourist heavy. I know it was actually done in association with the Shimane Prefecture Tourism Board, so it makes sense, but I just found it to be like quite overkill. I was only really interested in the mystery story, and so like constantly having to hear about, oh, here's the full history of this temple, wasn't particularly interesting to me personally. People's mileage will vary on that, but it just got to me after a while. But again, that one's a very personal one. And my last point of criticism is that the game makes it so hard to gather evidence. Like I said, you know, you have to talk to people sometimes in the right order, sometimes you have to talk to them multiple times. And like I said, I did have to follow a walkthrough for more than half the game, just because I felt so lost, even more so than Phoenix Wright, honestly. And so gathering the information is very difficult. And then the confrontations are just so piss easy. Just a weird disconnect between how hard it is to find all the information and then your confrontations. I didn't need the walkthroughs ever for the confrontations. I could always know what the right option was. I think it's because like Phoenix Wright in a confrontation, you know, like in court or something, you've got all these different statements to examine, you've got all your evidence, and you're just told, go, find the error here. Whereas in the confrontations, Yagumo stops at their incorrect statement or whatever, and is like, oh, this is what's wrong with it. And then it gives you like 3 options of which to say. So you just like go through the 3 options and you're like, oh yeah, that is what's wrong with it. And you select that. So it just would have been nice if there was a bit more of a balance between how difficult finding information was and how easy the confrontations were. So I know I just talked about my criticisms a lot, but overall I still think it was a pretty decent game. It just had quite a few issues that like bothered me as I was playing, so I made sure to write them down because I didn't want to forget them. But the story was pretty good, the art was pretty decent as well. It was an okay playtime, like 12 hours. I think it was like fairly pricey, but 12 hours isn't too bad for a visual novel. And it really was very clearly inspired by Phoenix Wright, because even though you're a director, you are randomly allowed to go to crime scenes quite a bit and talk to the police and stuff. Like they make note of that in the story, but you are very much like Phoenix Wright, just kind of going wherever you want and gathering all this information and everything. So there you go, those were my final thoughts on the game Root Film on Nintendo Switch. Thank you guys very much for watching this. If you have any questions about it, let me know in the comments below and I'll answer those just in case I missed something in this, which I might have done. But thank you for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye!